Right, good morning everyone. So this session we are going to begin with the biology part. As I was explaining you, for general science part, whether it is TSPSC Group 1 or Group 2 exams or even Group 4 exams and other competitive exams, biology has a bigger chunk. Okay, so we have more questions that we can expect from this, although there is a trend of moving from general science to the science and technology. Even in that sense as well, biology forms a very good basis for applications. Like in biotechnology, we can learn about vaccines, we can learn about newer diagnostic methods, we can learn about gene therapy like aspects. These are all new developments in sciences, specifically in biotechnology, which are based on the concepts in biology. So either in the exams, if you get direct questions from the basics in biology, this is important, or even to understand advanced developments in biotechnology also, this area is important. Okay, keep that in mind. So where should we start? As I said, the most fundamental thing that we talk about or we study about is cell. Okay, cell is considered to be fundamental unit of life. It is considered to be fundamental unit of life. What does it mean? Doesn't matter any living organism, whether it is very simple organism like bacteria you think about, or more complex organisms like us, humans, plants, animals, humans, all of them are made up of cells. So all living organisms made up of cells. Okay, that is why this is called fundamental unit of life. Fundamental unit of life. Like how walls are made with bricks, similarly living organisms are made with these cells. So can we call cells as bricks of life, bricks of living forms? It's more like that. Okay, so there are few things that we need to understand here. Generally, if you observe, so we notice that we have cells that in making up living organisms. Sometimes one cell is one living organism. How do we call those cells which have only one cell in them? How do we call those organisms which are made up of only single cell? Single cellular organisms. So some in nature are only made up of one cell. Then we call it single cellular organisms. How many cells we have in us? Many, right? Actually trillions of cells we have in our body. Are we also single cellular organisms? No, we are known as multicellular organisms. We are multicellular organisms, single cellular and multicellular organisms. So yes, all living forms are made up of cells. Some are only made up of one cell, whereas the others are made up of so many cells. How are these cells organized in multicellular organisms? How are they organized in multicellular organisms? Like in our body, look into your body. How are cells organized in our body? What are they organized into? What do they make up? Where do you find cells in your body? Everywhere, right? Everywhere. Okay, are just cells floating around? Do we have these free floating cells around? No, right? Okay, what do we see then? We actually see them organized into different structures. Let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at how this is organized. This is something you all know very well. Okay, this is something you all know very well. Cells generally come together and give rise to what is called tissues. This is a cell that we are talking about. Cells give rise to tissues. Correct? Group of cells giving rise to a particular tissue, which can further give rise to what is called organs. Organs we call, right? Cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, and organs like that come together to form what is called organ systems. Like respiratory system, if you can think about, lungs are part of respiratory system. There are some tubes or channels, bronchi or bronchial region, those make up respiratory system. So like that, different organs, different parts gives rise to a system. This system is called, in this particular case, respiratory system. Like that, there are many systems in our body, right? Can you think about those kind of systems? We have digestive system, we have like a muscular system, we have skeletal system, we have circulatory system, nervous system, correct? Like that, different systems are made up of different tissues are made up of different cells. This is a hierarchy in living organisms, especially in multicellular organisms like us. Okay, right. And together we have many such systems. We have digestive, we have respiratory and other systems I talked about. Together they give rise to our body. This is how cells are organized and gives rise to specialized organs to perform specialized functions. That's how we survive. That is how multicellular organisms survive. Okay, and we study this in physics. If we study about physics and chemistry, we see that we go even deeper than the cell. In biology, cell is a fundamental unit, cell is a representative unit. But if you are digging deeper, which we do in physics and chemistry, then we are even looking into the atoms and molecules, correct? Because atoms, what fundamentally makes up the matter around us? Doesn't matter whether it is living or non-living, it is what makes up the matter. If it is living organisms, then they make up cells, and the rest of the things that we talked about already holds true for this. Atoms make up molecules, correct? Let's look into the dimensions of this in a way. How big and how small are these? Can you tell me how small is an atom? What is the size of an atom roughly? Micrometers, nanometers, or even then smaller than nanometers? What do you think? Okay, they are even smaller than nanometers, Look at this image, observe this image. Atom is roughly around 0.1 nanometer. Okay, it is roughly 0.1 nanometer, 1/10 of a nanometer, even smaller than a nanometer. And when you combine multiple atoms, they give rise to molecules like this. You recognize molecules here? Proteins, lipids, and C60, which is made up of carbon. This is called fullerene. Okay, so proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, these kind of substances, what are they? They are molecules, and which are made up of atoms, correct? This is what makes up the cells that I was talking to you about. Small cells, think about really small cells like bacteria. Bacteria is one cell. Bacteria is a single cellular organism, a very good example for single cellular organism. Only one cell, within one cell its whole life happens. How big is bacteria? On average 1 micrometer. From this is where we can start seeing things with regular microscopes. Okay, the world even smaller than this, which includes even viruses. We learn later whether virus is made up of what kind of cell. Okay, we'll discuss the details, but virus is smaller than bacteria. It is much smaller than bacteria. What scale do you see viruses in? Fitting in nanometer scale. So naturally existing nanoparticles, in a way, viruses are like that, much smaller than bacteria. Okay, so what happens then? Look into mitochondria. We'll talk about this little later. Mitochondria, which is known as powerhouse of the cell, which is the organelle or the part where ATP, energy, is produced for the body. This is also as big as bacteria. So inside our cells we have mitochondria, which are as big as bacteria. So our cell must be bigger than this, right? How big? Look into this. Plant cells and animal cells, let's say roughly 50 micrometers in size, 50 times bigger than bacterial cell. That is why many bacteria can survive inside our cells. Okay, so bacteria is smaller, our cells are much bigger. So in nature, much bigger and much complex cells have produced. Single cellular eventually gave rise to multicellular organisms like this. Remember this picture, remember this idea that atoms are very small. How small is atom? Let's briefly revise this. How small is an atom? Roughly 1/10 of a nanometer. And we learned that atoms make up molecules. Can you give examples for molecules? Proteins, sugars, lipids or fats, they're all molecules. Okay, they are in few tens of nanometers in a scale. Right, and molecules make up cells. We have single cellular organisms like bacteria. What size is this? About a micrometer. It is approximate. They can be smaller, even much bigger bacteria as well. And then our cells, plant cells and animal cells, are they bigger or smaller than bacteria? They're bigger. They're bigger than them. That is why bacteria can enter into our body, cause infections in us. Viruses can enter into our bodies and cause infections. Viruses are different from these two. We'll learn that. Okay. Then pollens, egg cells, frog egg cells, etc. are even bigger than that. Right. This is to give you a picture about how big and how small are our cells and bacterial cells and those that make up them. Okay. Next, before getting into details, there are a few things I want you to make a note of, because sometimes in these exams they even ask about different facts. Okay, let's learn about who identified these cells or who discovered cells. Do you know that? Who discovered cell for the first time? Robert Hooke. Do you know how long ago was that? When did he discover cell? Roughly 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 400 years ago. How long ago he discovered cells? Approximate, no negative marking, so don't worry. Just go with it. Do you want options? Yes. Okay, I'll give you 1900, early 1900s, late 1800s, 1700s, mid 1600s, 1900. Okay. Any other answers? Much earlier than that, mid 1600s. So here I am showing you some facts to write down. Okay, sometimes they even ask us questions on these facts. So cell was first time discovered by Robert Hooke, who is an English scientist, British scientist, in 1665 using a very simple, they call very primitive microscope. Please make a note of this. Robert Hooke using something like this, a very primitive microscope. Okay, in 1665, first time in a dead cell, a cork cell, in a cork. Okay, he started observing this under a microscope that he constructed. Okay, that was in 1665. Robert Hooke was a discoverer of cell. What he saw is a dead cell. In a dead part of the tissue from the cork, he observed this cell. And he called it a cell. He was a person to call it as a cell because it looks like a small room. It appeared like a small room. So he called, oh, this is a cell. That is how the name cell came. First observation and the naming of the cell happened in 1665 by Robert Hooke. Roughly after about a decade from that, in 1674, a Dutch scientist called Leeuwenhoek or Antony van Leeuwenhoek or simply Leeuwenhoek, he saw living cells. He took water from pond and observed that in a improved microscope or using an improved microscope, a microscope that is better than this. He took that because here we are looking at even much smaller cells, because I was telling you before, right, plant cells are little bigger and microorganisms are much smaller than the plant cells, right? More improved microscope was needed, and that was made by Antony van Leeuwenhoek, who is a Dutch scientist. He saw the pond water under this improved microscope and started seeing moving microorganisms. Okay, moving microorganisms. Mostly what he was looking at here, bacteria, protozoa, also single cellular organisms. But they are moving, they have life. Here Robert Hooke saw the dead ones. So those living organisms were observed by Leeuwenhoek in 1674. Then they started realizing there is a world that we can't see. There is so much around us we don't get to see. And by improving the microscopes, this world became more and more visible to us. More and more visible to us. But at that time they didn't know, they didn't have a clear idea about how they are giving rise to organisms like us. So the next thing, the major thing that we need to remember is what is called cell theory. Later on, multiple scientists have worked together to give rise to the idea we have today that all of us, all multicellular organisms are made up of cells. Cells are the fundamental units of life. And these scientists, Schwann and Schleiden, they studied plants and animals. And they came up with the idea, oh, looks like living organisms are made up of cells. This is called cell theory. What is cell theory? Today it's a very obvious thing to us. But at that time, when they had no clue about what they are looking at, they didn't have good tools, this was a big thing for them. So Schwann, Schleiden, and later another scientist called Virscha. All of them are German scientists. Schwann, Schleiden, and Virscha. These people have given what is called cell theory. What is cell theory about? Cell theory explained that all living organisms are made up of cells. So cells are fundamental units of these living organisms. They focused, of course, at that time on plants and animals. So they said, yes, plants are also made up of cells, animals are also made up of cells. So they found out what living organisms are made up of. And then later on, it was Virscha who found out that, where are they coming from then? Where are these so many cells coming from? He said, cells are coming from the already existing cells or pre-existing cells. We have few cells. Those cells give rise to more cells. Like that, cells are coming from, generated from the existing cells. These are the two important components of this theory. Okay, cells are fundamental units of life and cells are derived from or generated from the existing cells. Okay, so this cell theory is given by whom? Schwann, Schleiden, and Virscha. So these are some important names of the scientists. I know facts are little difficult to remember, but if you have a context about that, then it is much easier. Okay, I was showing you the microscope that Robert Hooke used, and I'm not sure if you can guess. What are you seeing here? What are you seeing here? Cells that he saw under this. This is his drawing. At that time, they didn't have cameras fitted to this microscopes. He drew this. He was an excellent artist. They say, I was reading one article on this, and just few years ago during COVID-19 time, they published this article where they said, today if you take excellent microscope and take a picture, he drew better pictures than what we can capture today. So imagine about his observation skills and also his drawing skills. He was a good artist. He was trained to be an artist and a biologist. So this is drawn by him to show how well this looks like. So Robert Hooke published even a book on this. Even today, this is one of the most wonderful books out there in biology. Okay, he wrote a book called Micrographia of minute bodies made from magnifying glasses. They used to call this as a magnifying glass under microscope, the primitive microscope. He wrote and drew all these observations. That is where the idea of this started. But if you have noticed, it took almost 180 years for them to give good details of this, even after this work. That is how, it's a very painful process. Today we might be feeling that we have to remember so much and so many things with no connections to it. Can you imagine how people have figured even this with not even good knowledge, no Google at that time, of course, no internet, and very primitive tools. So I don't think we should be able to complain today that we are not able to remember. They figured it out. That is the biggest task than remembering it, right? The problem with us is we don't have connections. We can't see connections. We don't feel how they have figured it out. That is why we tend to forget them. Okay, right. This is to cover some facts related to who came up with these ideas of cells, okay, and who gave the cell theory. Okay, now let's get into some details about the cells. So I was telling you that we have organisms which are single cellular, some are multicellular organisms. In multicellular, we also looked into the hierarchy of these organisms. Now let's learn about what are the different kinds of types of cells. Okay, two kinds of cells we mainly see. Okay, you can divide cells into, because we talked about single cellular, multicellular. Similarly, we can even divide cells into what is called prokaryotic cells or prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Do you know the difference between them? Let's first divide. In biology, it is about understanding the terminology. You see, for both of these terms, what is common? Karyo is common. Karyo is common to both. Karyo generally refers to nucleus. Karyo means nucleus. Prokaryo means, pro refers to primitive nucleus, meaning old fashioned, old kind of, or very simple nucleus, if at all, if it exists. So primitive nucleus, those organisms which carry primitive kind of nucleus are called prokaryotes. In theory, they don't even carry nucleus. There is nothing called nucleus as far as our understanding goes. Whereas the other set of organisms are called eukaryote. They carry nucleus. They carry what kind of nucleus? They carry true nucleus. They carry true nucleus. Those that carry a real nucleus are called as eukaryotes. Eukaryotes. Prokaryotes, eukaryotes. Can you think of some organisms? Because here we are talking about those without nucleus, those with nucleus. Okay. Although historically it was described based on nucleus, but prokaryotes contain no such compartments which are known as organelles. Not only nucleus, these primitive cells, they carry no organelles at all. What are organelles? Organelles are compartments. They are more like compartments. They are more like compartments. It's like rooms in our homes. Rooms in our homes. There are no such rooms inside the cells, inside the prokaryotic cells. Not only nucleus, the other organelles also, other compartments also don't exist. Such cells are called prokaryotic cells. Can you think of any examples for prokaryotic cells? Any examples for prokaryotic cells? Bacteria. Bacteria is a good example to remember. Bacteria is a prokaryote. Bacteria is a prokaryote. Okay, I'll form a question and ask you about eukaryotes. Okay, tell me which of the following are eukaryotes, because I've mentioned to you, I gave one example for prokaryote, which is bacteria. Which of the following are eukaryotes? Look at them. Yeast, amoeba. Okay, that's called rhizopus. Okay, or algae, plants, animals. Which of them are eukaryotes? Tell me. Algae, eukaryote. Okay, fine. What else? Amoeba. From this, pick up from the list. Yeast is also eukaryote. Okay. Protozoa, not given in the options. So amoeba is a protozoan. Okay. Rhizopus, it's a fungus. Is fungi eukaryote or prokaryotes? Prokaryote. Okay. All of these are eukaryotes. Fungi is also eukaryote. All of these are eukaryotes. But the thing is, this yeast, amoeba, etc., they are single cellular organisms. They are made up of single cells. So what does it mean? Eukaryotes also carry single cellular organisms. Bacteria is also single cellular organism. Prokaryotes only contain single cellular organisms. Eukaryotes can contain either single cellular organisms or multicellular. All these are multicellular. Algae, fungi, plants, animals. This yeast, amoeba are single cellular organisms. So even eukaryotes can contain single cellular organisms. Okay. Protozoa, if you think about protozoa carries single cellular eukaryotes, like the one that causes malaria, which is Plasmodium, the one that causes malaria, Plasmodium, Euglena, Paramecium. You heard about them? Euglena, Paramecium. These are all single cellular eukaryotes. These are all single cellular eukaryotes. Plasmodium, Euglena, Amoeba, Paramecium. What are they? They are made up of single cells. So the single cellular eukaryotes. Why are we calling them as eukaryotes? Because if you see them under microscopes, do they carry organelles or no organelles in them? They carry organelles. That is why it's a eukaryote. They have compartments, they have organelles in them, but they could still be single cellular. And we have both single cellular as well as multicellular organisms in eukaryotes, whereas we have only single cellular organisms in prokaryotes. Bacteria is a good example for prokaryote. Okay, plants, animals, us, yeast, fungi, algae, they are all eukaryotes. Okay, here we briefly learnt about the difference between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Now let us learn about details about them. Okay, let us learn about the details. So what I am going to do, first I am going to take a eukaryotic cell. We learn about how a eukaryotic cell looks like. Okay, because I was mentioning to you that eukaryotic cells they carry organelles. They have organelles in them, they have compartments in them. Let us learn what kind of organelles are present in eukaryotes and what do they do, what is their purpose inside our body. Okay, let's learn about these things. So here we are going to see now eukaryotic cells. We are going to see eukaryotic cells and organelles in eukaryotic cells. Can you list some of the organelles you find inside the eukaryotic cells? Can you think about some organelles? I was already mentioning about nucleus too, right? Okay, let's see the other organelles. What do you observe in this image? Okay, you can imagine, you can draw a simple diagram for this. You can imagine, we have a cell that looks like a eukaryotic cell that looks like. Generally, if you notice, there are two parts that you notice within the cell. At the center of the cell, we have what is called nucleus. At the center of the cell, we have what is called nucleus. And surrounding the nucleus, we have what is called cytoplasm. This is like a fluid. This is like a fluid in which many organelles are floating, including the nucleus. Such fluid is called cytoplasm. So nucleus at the center, cytoplasm surrounding that. How do we know this is a cell? Is there any boundary to the cell? Cell is covered by cell membrane. This is the covering, outer covering of cells. This is called cell membrane. Especially in animal cells, the outer layer is always the membrane. If you see the plant cells, bacterial cells, there is additional layer surrounding the cell membrane. But for animal cells like us, the outer layer is cell membrane. At the center we have what is called a nucleus, and surrounding the nucleus what do we have is a cytoplasm. Okay. Now let's learn about what each of them are doing and also see what other organelles are present here. First of all, let's learn about the function or importance of cell membrane. What do you think is the purpose of cell membrane in cells, specifically in animal cells? Why do we need cell membrane? To protect the nucleus. Only nucleus? Not necessary, right? So cell membrane is basically the protective layer, I agree. protective layer. So one of the main function of cell membrane is to give the protection from any external impacts. Protection. Any other benefit? And it is what defining the shape of the cell. Hey, I'm like this. You are covered by, like a layer, and you are not letting any unnecessary things coming out as well. So they are providing protection to the internal parts. So protection is definitely the most important function of that. Second, is it completely closed? Does it allow movement of anything into the cell? Is this cell membrane, does it allow movement of anything inside? It does. Okay. It also allows what is called selective transport, meaning it can allow movement of certain molecules into the cell. Although we have a membrane, imagine as if it has very, very tiny pores, only allows tiny molecules, like let's say water, something like water, let's say oxygen, let's say carbon dioxide. So it would allow the transport of such molecules into the cell only selectively. It only allows certain molecules to move into the cell. For example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, water can go through this membrane. So although we have a boundary, it would still allow certain molecules to enter. That is also the function of cell membrane. One is protection and another one is transport. And transport is selective transport. What is the meaning of selective transport? Only allows certain molecules to move through the membrane. These are two important functions of cell membrane. Okay. Now let's have a look at the nucleus. More or less, even in the image you see here, more or less towards the center, we will find what is called nucleus. What is the purpose of nucleus? Why do we have nucleus in the cell? Nucleus is more like CPU of a computer. What is present inside the nucleus? We have DNA, genetic material of the organism is present in the nucleus. Genetic material of an organism is sitting inside the nucleus. Most of the times it is DNA. It is present in the form of DNA. This is the software of the cell. And where do we get this DNA from? From our parents. From our parents. The DNA sitting in the center of the cell in the nucleus. So nucleus is harboring genetic material, and genetic material mostly found in the form of DNA. What does DNA stands for? Deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. This is a form in which our genetic material is present. Later on we will study not all organisms carry DNA. Most of the living organisms carry DNA as a genetic material or DNA as a software. Can you name those organisms which can carry something else as a genetic material? Two questions here. What is that something else, and which organisms am I talking about here? RNA, correct? That something else is RNA. Some organisms carry RNA as a genetic material. What does RNA stands for? Ribonucleic acid. Correct. Ribonucleic acid. Can you name the organisms which carry RNA as a genetic material? Coronavirus. Correct. Exactly. Coronavirus. So some viruses, not all, but yes, you are absolutely right. Some viruses carry RNA as a genetic material. DNA is a principal genetic material in living organisms. RNA can also be genetic material in some organisms, like the case with the viruses. Not all viruses carry RNA though. Some viruses carry RNA as a genetic material. In infections class we learn about that most of the human infectious viruses carry RNA as a genetic material, which is the case with coronavirus as well. HIV, coronavirus, most of the viruses, Zika, Nipah, Ebola, they all carry RNA as a genetic material. Okay, remember this. Right. So inside the nucleus, we have genetic material that is sitting, which is mostly DNA. Some organisms like viruses may carry RNA as a genetic material. Okay. Right. So what happens outside this? Now let's see. Let's go outside the nucleus and see what organelles are present here. This is a nucleus. Now we are going to visit the other organelles and their function. Okay, first we talked about cell membrane. Okay, then we talked about nucleus. Now we are going to talk about the other organelles. To begin with, if you observe, very close to, almost associated with the nucleus, we have some membrane like foldings. Okay, this is another organelle called endoplasmic reticulum, or in short it is called ER, endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum, which in short is called as ER. What are we learning here? We are learning about different organelles, different compartments found inside the eukaryotic cell. The first organelle we talked about was the nucleus. Second organelle is ER. What do you want to remember from this for the exam? What is it? What is the function of it? If you can remember, that is good enough for the exam. ER can be divided into two types. We have what is called smooth ER, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, rough endoplasmic reticulum. Because when scientists observe these structures under microscope, part of it is rough, as if there is something sitting on this organelle. If you see in the image here, this membrane like this folded structures, there are dots on them. The dotted region is called rough. The one without the dots, if you notice these regions with no dots on them, they look smooth. So what are these dots? These dots are ribosomes. These dots are ribosomes. What are these dots? These are some molecules. These are some molecules called ribosomes. Ribosomes. So ribosomes found on the rough part of the endoplasmic reticulum, which is the second organelle we are talking about. What do ribosomes do? Do you know the function of ribosomes? What is their job? Ribosomes are meant for synthesizing or making proteins in our body. They make proteins. So ribosomes are responsible for creating proteins. So based on this link, you can understand that it is a job of endoplasmic reticulum to help produce proteins. This is where proteins are made mostly. They can also be made somewhere else, but most of the times on ER, on particularly rough part of the ER, proteins are synthesized with the help of ribosomes. Okay, right. Then what about the other part of the ribosomes, which is smooth part of the ribosomes? As there are no ribosomes there, they are not making proteins. The smooth part of endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for producing other kinds of molecules called lipids. Do you know what are lipids? Lipids are fats. Those are also synthesized on ER, but on the smooth part of the ER. On the rough part of the ER, because ribosomes are present, proteins are produced. So can we call this as a manufacturing unit of the cell? Because it is manufacturing proteins, it is manufacturing lipids. If you have to remember, the hint here is to remember ER as the manufacturing unit of the cell. Because it is responsible for producing very important molecules like lipids, proteins for the body. So in a way, what you are observing here, cell is able to make something that it requires. It is able to make proteins to run the cell. It is able to make lipids. Do you know where lipids are used in the cell? Proteins can be used anywhere for any process in the cell. Lipids specifically what makes up the cell membrane. So when you create lipids can be used in making the new membrane around the cell. When you are creating new cell, This is used as a raw material for that. This is used as a raw material for that. So cell is making its own components. One part is responsible for making lipids, another part is responsible for making proteins. So in a way, you can remember ER as the manufacturing unit of the cell. Okay, now what happens after this molecules are made? It may store it for some time. So ER may also serve the other functions. ER may store these molecules for some time. ER may even process them. It's like a industry. An industry, what normally happens? You probably produce certain products in the industry. Then what do? You may store it until you sell it or give it to someone. You may even start doing some processing to that. Some like packing, etc. can be done as well, right? Those processes can also happen in the ER, storage, processing, etc. Then what happens? In any industry, once a product is made, what do you do with the product? You want to sell it, but generally are they got sold at the manufacturing facility itself? Usually not. You have to transport them to maybe the places where they are sold, like stores, etc. Who takes them around? Who takes these molecules made inside the ER? What is that organelle in the cell which is responsible for this? Specifically, we are talking about here an organelle that is responsible for transporting them. That is the third organelle we are going to talk about here, which happens to be Golgi. Which happens to be Golgi. Do you see here? Golgi apparatus. Okay. These vesicles like structures you are seeing here. Vesicles like structures you are seeing here. Okay. This is called Golgi. Golgi apparatus we call, Golgi complex you can call. Okay. The third one here is Golgi. What is the function of this organelle, this compartment? It is meant for transport. It is meant for carrying either proteins or lipids produced in the cell to the target sites. If you notice here, what is Golgi doing? It is dropping these vesicles here. Lipid is dropped at the membrane. So now you can extend the membrane. Similarly, it can also carry proteins and drop proteins here or wherever proteins are needed. You can even drop protein at the membrane. There are some proteins found in the membrane as well, like channels, like gates. So like that. So Golgi's role is to carry the molecules to the various destinations. So this is like a transport system. Manufacturing unit, transport unit. Okay. Right. Next, for all these things to function, for manufacturing to happen, for transport to happen, what do you need? What is the requirement for, let's say, the machines to work inside these compartments, inside these organelles? What is the need? If you want to run any machine, what do we need? Energy, right? We need power, we need energy. Where is power coming from? From another organelle called mitochondria. Inside the cell, we have now mitochondria. Inside the cell we have what is called mitochondria, which is considered as powerhouse of the cell, mitochondria. Okay, it is like a cell being self-sufficient. In Telangana it's more like a Ramagundam. We make our power there. Cell has such power unit inside them. Multiple power units are found inside the cells. What are they doing? They are producing energy that is needed for the cell. In what form does it produce energy? I guess you know this. Mitochondria produces power in the form of, correct, ATP. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. ATP is a chemical. When you break it, you release energy. ATP is like basically a chemical with 3 phosphates attached to it. When you break this bond, This bond releases energy. So in the form of this chemical compound, you are storing energy. It's like eating a chocolate. You eat a chocolate, it releases energy, right? Because we have sugars in the chocolate. Our body can process the sugars and release energy. Similar to that, here within this chemical bonds, energy is stored. When cell breaks it during a chemical process, energy is produced. Using that energy, it can do some work. And where is this happening? It is happening inside the mitochondria. Mitochondria is also part of cell. So this is another organelle. So let's see what are we learning so far. So far we learnt about different organelles like compartments which are serving different purposes. These are all covered by a membrane. A membrane. What is the function that a membrane serving in addition to protection? Transport. It is also allowing the movement of certain molecules. Okay. Then we talked about at the center of the cell, what do we have? Nucleus. What is the purpose of nucleus in the cell? It stores genetic material. It stores genetic material. It is like software. It gives rise to all our characteristics. Okay, we'll learn the details about this in genetics part. For now, just remember, nucleus is where genetic material is stored. It is also covered. Any of these organelles, they're all covered by membranes. Most of the times, 2 layers of the membranes are present in them. Okay, otherwise, how do you differentiate it as a separate compartment? We need to have a cover around it, right? So there are membranes. These are all, sometimes we call them as membrane bound organelles. Like that, nucleus stores information. So information unit. What did we discuss about ER? How did we describe ER? Endoplasmic reticulum is a manufacturing unit. What gets manufactured here? Proteins and lipids can be manufactured here. And who is carrying them around? Golgi. So Golgi can be called as transport unit of the cell. And for all these activities to happen, we need power. Where is power coming from? Mitochondria. So in what form does power produced in mitochondria? ATP. Okay. How does ATP give energy? Energy is stored in the form of chemical bonds. When you break the bond, energy is released. Okay. All this is positive side of the cell, positive aspects of the cell. But things can also go wrong. Accidents can also happen. Do we have any organelles in the body which attend to these kind of accidents? Okay, we have another organelle called lysosome. Lysosome. Have you heard about lysosome? What is the function? What is the function of lysosome? Lysosome. Look at the term lysosome. The term lysosome. Lysis. It is a body. Generally, soma means body. Soma means body. Body where it is carrying out lysis. Body where it is carrying out lysis. Lysosome. What is it lysing here? What is it lysing here? Lysosome can lyse, let's say, damaged parts. If there are any damaged parts in the cell. Okay, something is broken, it will recycle them. It will recycle them. Okay, or not only the body parts, not only the body parts, even external organisms like bacteria gets into our cell. It can eat that bacteria and digest it into pieces. So it can even lyse bacteria. It can lyse bacteria. It can lyse damaged parts. Okay. Sometimes, I'm not sure if you heard about this nickname given to lysosome. Lysosomes are called as suicidal bags of life. These are known as suicidal bags of life. In the exams, they can ask questions like this. Which of the following organelle in a cell is called as suicidal bag? Which organelle? Lysosome. But why is it called as a suicidal bag? Why is it called as a suicidal bag? If you are not able to see, I have written it like this. Suicidal bag. Why is it called as a suicidal bag? Why lysosome is called as a suicidal bag? Kills the bacteria. But killing bacteria is not suicide. Correct. If we are killing ourselves, then it is called suicide. Meaning, Cell must be killing itself. Cell must be killing itself. In what conditions do you think cell will kill itself? Imagine there is so much of damage happened. Let's say our DNA got damaged inside the cell. Here we have DNA. DNA got damaged to an extent where cell cannot run. Then what does cell do? Cell sacrifices itself. It releases inside lysosome. There are enzymes called lysozymes. Okay, there are many other enzymes, but especially lysozymes. What will it do? It will release these enzymes. It will release these enzymes into the cell, and they'll break down the entire cell, and cell itself will die. So it can kill the cell when there is too much damage happened, or it can kill the cell when it is infected and it cannot cure itself. Then cell will destroy itself. Self-destruction takes place because of lysosome. That is why this is called suicidal bag of the cell. Got it? Powerhouse of the cell, suicidal bag of the cell, transport unit, and manufacturing unit. Remember things like that. Then it will be much easier for you to process and recollect when you need them in the exam. Got it? Okay. Right? These are some of the very important organelles that we find within the eukaryotic cells. There are more than that. We also find some other organelles as well inside the cells. Like peroxisomes. There are few other organelles are there, but I believe these are the most important ones. Sometimes we also find what is called peroxisomes. Have you heard about them? Peroxisomes. Can you guess from the name? Soma means body. Peroxy, something to do with a chemical substance called peroxide. Peroxide. Have you heard about hydrogen peroxide? H2O2. Have you heard about H2O2? Hydrogen peroxide. This is a toxic substance produced in our body. When body performs different chemical processes, it can produce these kind of toxic substances. And peroxisomes are responsible for breaking this H2O2 into water and oxygen. Water and oxygen. Water and oxygen. Such an organelle is called peroxisomes. More things happen here, but they can oxidize substances, they can break down substances. Such organelles are also present inside the eukaryotic cells. Got it? So here we talked about different organelles found inside the cells and what are they doing. Any questions on this? Anything that you would like to ask? Is it clear? We're talking about what is cell filled with, what kind of organelles are found inside the cells. We learned about different kinds of cells. Okay, remember each of their function. Can you quickly tell me what did we learn here? What is the function of nucleus? Storing the genetic information. What is the function of ER? Manufacturing. What does it manufacture? Proteins and lipids. What is the role of Golgi? Transport. Okay, mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell. In what form does it produce? ATP. And then lysosome, it actually responsible for lysing. How does it lyse? What kind of enzymes does it have? Lysozyme. What does it do? It will break down the damaged parts. Can it also break down the entire cell? Yes. Yes, it can. For that, we refer it to as suicidal bag. Why is it called as suicidal bag? Because if cell is damaged, irreparable damage happened to the cell, DNA got damaged, it cannot exist, it cannot survive, then that can be destroyed. Got it? So like that, there are different organelles in the eukaryotic cells serving different functions. Now, what are we going to study next? Next we are going to compare this. Now we learnt this as a reference cell. We learnt about eukaryotic cell. Now let us compare that with the plant cell, another eukaryotic cell called plant cell, because this cell that we discussed here is an animal cell. Okay, let's look into a plant cell. What do you see? The difference between plant and animal cells. What are the differences between plant and animal cells? Let's have a look at that. This image shows you the key differences. Please try to read the parts in the plant cell and see which of them we already studied or which of them we already found in the animal cell. Okay, I'll ask you one after other. Let's start from the outer layer. Let's start from the outer layer. I want you to make a note of those that look different. okay, that are not present in the eukaryotic cell like a animal cell but in the plant cell. Okay, look at this plasma membrane. Did we find plasma membrane in animal cells? Plasma membrane, are they present in animal cell? What is a cell membrane? Cell membrane is also called as plasma membrane. It's just a different name to cell membrane. Cell membrane or plasma membrane. Make a note of that. In the animal cells, cell membrane, you can also refer it to as a plasma membrane. Both mean the same. Cell or plasma membrane, both mean the same. So in plants, plasma membrane or cell membrane is present. But is a plasma membrane or cell membrane the outer layer? Is it the outer layer? Look at this image clearly. They are referring to this part as a cell membrane. Do we have another layer surrounding it? In this image, do you see another layer surrounding this? We do see, right? Look at this. There is another layer here. How is that called? Cell wall. Cell wall. Is cell wall present in animals? In animal cells. Did we learn about cell wall being present in animal cells? No, it is not. Animal cells do not have cell wall. Plant cells do have cell wall. And cell wall is a outer layer. The layer surrounding the plasma membrane. Cell wall is the outermost layer in plant cells. Outermost layer in plant cells, which is absent in the animal cells. So, understand this as a difference between plant cells and animal cells. Okay, you can draw actually a table for a comparison where you can write like this: animal cell on the left, plant cell on the right. Animal cell and plant cell. Here you write down cell membrane present in animal cells, present in plant cells. Next, we talked about cell wall. Cell wall is present in animal cells? No, it is not. Plant cells? Yes. Okay, like that, make the list of differences between plant cells and animal cells based on this discussion. Okay, inside the cell membrane now, inside the cell membrane, there is cytoplasm, which is a fluid, correct? So cytoplasm is present here. Okay, and then what do you notice as organelles inside? Is there a nucleus in the plant cell? Yes, there is. Nucleus that contains genetic material like in the animal cell. Okay, right, nucleus is present. Right, what else? Do we have ER covering this? ER surrounding this? Yes, smooth, rough endoplasmic reticulums, as we discussed in the animal cells, are also present in plant cells. Right? So ER, you can write down these things. Nucleus, ER. They are present in both plant cells, animal cells. So we are picking up now the ones that are present in both. Except for cell wall, so far nucleus, ER, even Golgi, mitochondria, peroxisomes. These are all also present in the animal cells. They serve the same function here. So we don't have to separately learn about them. So Golgi, mitochondria, peroxisome and ribosomes and the ER are also found in the plant cells. Like cell wall, what else is unique here? What else is unique here? Let's check this. Let's check. Like we have in the plant cell what is called as plastids. Plastids. One good example for plastid is chloroplast. Chloroplast. You know, you heard about chloroplast? You heard about chlorophyll? That is a pigment, a plant pigment, which is responsible for photosynthesis to take place. So in plant cells, we have plastids. Plastid is a broad term. Plastid can be any kind of colored pigments or uncolored pigments can be found in this. One example for plastid is the chloroplast. Are chloroplasts also found in animals? No, they are not, because chloroplast is mainly responsible for photosynthesis. What is responsible for? Photosynthesis. Because chloroplast carries what is called chlorophyll, which helps in absorbing sunlight, which helps in absorbing sunlight. So chloroplasts are unique to plant cells. They are not found in animal cells. What is the purpose of chloroplast? Facilitate photosynthesis, help in photosynthesis process. We'll learn this. In plants we'll discuss what is the role of chlorophyll specifically. But I just mentioned here, it helps in absorbing the sunlight and converting that sunlight into sugars. And that photosynthesis is helped by chloroplasts. And these chloroplasts are found in plant cells but not in animal cells. Okay, right. So plastids like chloroplasts are found in plant cells. Then what else do you see differently here? I think if you had the first look itself should have gave you something different in plant cell, because nucleus is pushed onto one side. There is one big bubble like structure that is found here. What is it? This is called vacuole, or specifically this is called central vacuole. This is a vacuole or central vacuole. It is more like a bag filled with water. What is central vacuole? It is something that is filled with water, let's say, water. Or they call it cell sap, fluid, cell fluid or cell sap. Why is it filled? Why do we need such a big bubble? Okay, when you are filling something with a bubble, you can check that. Like take a balloon, fill a balloon with water. What happens if you try to put pressure on that water filled balloon? What will happen? Can you change the shape of it? It is, take a balloon, fill it with water, press it. What happens? It will come back, it will retain the shape of it. For that purpose, to build pressure, okay, these vacuoles are created in plants. What would it do? By filling itself with the cell fluid or cell sap, whenever there is some impact that is created on the cell, it will create a reverse impact on it. It will oppose it. So it is maintaining pressure. It is maintaining some kind of pressure against cell wall. You are pressing something from this side, it will go back, it will push it back. So it is maintaining the structure of the cell. It is helping in maintaining the structure of the cell. It exerts opposite pressure that is applied on the cell wall, because it is filled with the fluid. So it will exert the opposing pressure on that. Okay, and thereby maintaining the or help in maintaining the shape and structure of the plant cell. Such vacuoles are called central vacuoles. Central vacuoles. Now the question is, I want you to answer this question. Okay, yeah, I'll let you finish writing down. So vacuole, specifically we are talking about central vacuole. What is it filled with? Cell fluid or cell sap or water. What is the purpose of this? It can exert pressure against the cell wall, thereby maintaining the structure of the plant cell. Now the question is, do you think animal cells also have these vacuoles? Are vacuoles found in animal cells as well? This is one of the 2020's UPSC prelims question. They asked a question on cell in even UPSC exam. What do you think? Do animal cells also carry vacuoles? We have not talked about them, but I am asking you whether they are present. Yes. Okay. Okay. How big are they? Are they big or small? If they are present. Animal cells tend to carry small vacuoles. Some animal cells tend to carry small vacuoles, not big one like in the plant. What is unique to the plant? Central vacuole. Big vacuole is the unique thing about plants. But animal cells may also carry small vacuoles. Please make a note of this. Animal cells can carry small vacuoles. Animal cells can carry small vacuoles. In animal cells there can be small vacuoles. In plant cell it tends to have a big central vacuole. Okay, so one of the statement that you need to know whether it is true or false. Small vacuoles can be present in animal cells and large vacuoles are generally found in the plant cells. Okay, right. Anything else? These are the most important differences I want you to remember. Plant cells carry cell wall. Plant cells carry cell wall. Plant cells carry chloroplast. Plant cells carry central vacuole. Central vacuole. Okay, I believe for this class, for this kind of exam, this is good enough. There are more differences between plant and animal cells. I am not going into those details. That will complicate the class. I am not getting into those details. But otherwise we have what is called cytoskeletal elements. Maybe while we discuss about cell division, I will briefly tell you what they are. But these are found both in plants and animal cells. No problem. Cytoskeleton. More like the skeletal system like we see in the body. Similarly, cell skeleton. Cytoskeleton is also found. Okay, when I'll explain you about the cell division process, we can briefly talk about that. But for now, that is good enough. Knowing these differences are good enough. Okay, next. Now this is how plant cells differ from the animal cells. Next, we are going to look into bacterial cell. We are going to look into bacteria, which is an example of prokaryotes, because both plants and animals are eukaryotic cells, right? Both of them are eukaryotic cells. So let us compare now a eukaryotic cell with a prokaryotic cell. What are the major differences you find between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell? Right. So bacteria is a prokaryote. So how many cells is it made up of then? Only one cell, single cellular organism. And do we find organelles here or not? Are compartments or organelles found in them? No. That is a characteristic feature, no organelles in them. Does it mean, let's say there is no nucleus, does it mean there is no DNA in them? Does bacteria carry its own DNA? Does bacteria carry its own chromosome? It does, but it is not sitting inside a nucleus. It is just openly sitting here. You see this? This is the chromosome of bacteria. This is a chromosome of bacteria. Chromosome. And for now remember, chromosome and DNA are same for us. I'll explain the difference in genetics, but for now remember, chromosome, DNA are synonymous to each other. Okay, this chromosome is found in bacteria, but there is no membrane. Do you notice any membrane surrounding them? No. Okay, so we are not seeing any organelles inside the bacteria. It's a prokaryote. Okay, let's begin discussing about what is it covered with first. What is the outermost cover of bacterial cell? Let's start with this. Plasma membrane. Is plasma membrane, which was part of both plant cells, animal cells, is also there in bacteria. Okay, plasma membrane is present. And bacteria, in addition to this, also carries second layer, which is called cell wall, which is common to plant as well as bacterial. What about animal cells? Do animal cells also carry cell wall? No, they don't. The outermost layer in animal cells is plasma membrane, cell membrane, no cell wall. Cell wall is seen in plants, cell wall is seen in bacteria, cell wall can be seen in fungi, but not in animal cells. Okay, so plasma membrane, second layer, cell wall. This is most common to even bacteria. Both plasma membrane, cell wall is most common, but some bacteria can also carry a third layer. They can also carry a third layer called capsule. Not all microorganisms carry them. Some bacteria carry this, and especially those that are resistant, those that are able to survive inside our body, inside our stomach, inside our acid produced in the stomach. Such bacteria tend to carry a third layer. It's like third jacket. Imagine as if you are walking in winter. We wear layers of jackets. It's like that. Bacteria is now, it has, in addition to plasma membrane, it has cell wall. It also has another layer called capsule. Not all of them, some of them carry this capsule. So some microbes like bacteria can carry a third layer called as capsule. So this is one major difference from prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Like plant cells, bacteria also carries cell wall. Next. Excuse me. Okay, inside, let's have a look into the plant's bacterial cell. I have already told you a chromosome is just floating here. There is no particular membrane, but there is a name to this region that is called as nucleoid. Nucleoid, make a note of that. The region where chromosome is found, chromosome is placed in bacteria is called nucleoid. Nucleoid. That is the name of that. This is not called a nucleus. There is no membrane. But that region where chromosome is found is called as nucleoid. This is important for exam. Knowing this name in connection with the location where chromosome or DNA found in bacteria is called as nucleoid. Okay, right. What else do you see here? Nothing, no other organelles, but all sorts of things take place inside. If bacteria needs to digest some food, digestion takes place here inside it. Bacteria wants to convert this digested food into energy. That means respiration. Respiration also takes place. They don't have nose, they don't breathe like us, they don't have lungs, but still respiration takes place. Yesterday I was explaining you what happens in respiration. Food is converted into energy. Food is converted into energy. Okay, and that can happen here. In a way, inside this there may be a small folding like this, on which this respiration may take place. So inside bacteria there can be digestion taking place, there can be respiration taking place. Like that, many metabolic activities still take place in bacteria. It's a living organism, but there is no concept of compartments in them. That is a major difference between a prokaryotic cell and eukaryotic cell. Okay, any other additional structures you are seeing in the image here? What else do you find here? There is one big tail-like structure, right? Big tail-like structure, which is known as flagella. Flagella. What is flagella? Flagella is more like a tail attached to bacteria, which is meant for swimming, locomotion or swimming. Flagella is meant for movement or locomotion. So with the help of flagella, because where is bacteria generally found? Maybe inside our body, maybe in the water, maybe in the air. It can basically swim with the help of flagella. Flagella is a locomotory organ that helps in movement of bacteria. That is what's called locomotion, locomotory organ. That is the role of flagella. In addition to flagella, what do you find? You find some hair-like projections, hair-like structures, which are called as pili. These structures are called as pili. What is the use of pili in bacteria? Imagine a scenario where we got bacteria, in our nose, in our lungs. What happens when we sneeze? They should all come out, right? They developed special structures to attach themselves to the tissues in the body, and these structures are called pili. Okay, pili. What do? With the help of pili, they attach themselves to various parts in the body. They use pili to attach to various cells in the various parts in the body. So these are helping in their survival. Flagella is meant for locomotion, pili is meant for attachment. Got it? That is how a bacterial cell look like. Let us quickly review what we learnt in bacterial cell. What is the outermost layer in bacteria? Is it cell membrane? No, there is also cell wall. Sometimes they can have another layer called capsule. Okay, extra jacket. Think like this. Plants, bacteria, they live outside. They don't have their own homes. So they have to expose themselves and survive in the harsh environments. So they have extra layer that they came up with. In evolution, they came up with extra layer, extra jacket. That is how you remember. Animal cells, generally we have either animals or us, we'll tend to live inside homes. We can create shelters and live inside shelters. So we don't need extra layer. Remember something like that. So cell wall is found in plants and bacterial cells. Okay. How do we call the region where genetic material as DNA or chromosome found in the bacteria? Nucleoid. Nucleoid. Does metabolic reactions take place in bacteria? Or like digestion, generation of energy, do they happen? They do. Where? Maybe there is small folding. It's like in a bachelor room. It's like in a bachelor room. What happens? Where do we cook in bachelor room? Depends on the mood today. Today I would like to cook here. We don't generally cook. But if you want to cook, we'll cook in one corner. Next day maybe another corner. I put a table here, I move the table to the another corner next day. There is no compartmentalization in bachelor rooms. Okay, whereas in the family rooms, like in animal, in eukaryotic cells and plant cells, we have many compartments. Okay, remember it like that. Okay, what is the structure responsible for locomotion in bacteria called as? Flagella. What is the role of pili in bacteria? They can help in attaching to the tissues. That's how a bacterial cell is created. Now, are you able to understand the differences between bacterial cells, which is a prokaryotic cell, and eukaryotic cells? Two kinds of eukaryotic cells we talked about here, animal cells and plant cells. Those differences can generally be asked in the exams. Okay. Before moving to the next idea in this, I would like to briefly mention about, because this is something that is important for the exams, I would like to add this extra detail here. Like we talked about cell wall being present both in plants as well as in animals. Okay? No. As well as in the bacterial cell. Is it made up of same thing? Is a cell wall in plant and cell wall in animal, is it same? Is cell wall in bacteria, is cell wall in plants are same? Are they made up of same thing? What do you say? No? What is it made up of? What is it made up of? In bacteria, cell wall is made up of what is called peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan. Make a note of this name. It may sound little complex, but if you really observe, peptidoglycan. Peptido means protein, glycan means sugar. Glycan means sugar. So it has sugar plus protein layer. Sugar attached with some proteins. What makes up cell wall? What makes up the cell wall in bacteria? A protein combined with sugar. Together we call peptidoglycan layer is what makes up the cell wall in bacteria. What about in plants? What is plant cell wall made up of? Plant cell wall is made up of cellulose. Mainly plant cell wall is made up of cellulose. There are other parts as well, like hemicellulose, lignin, etc., pectin. But what I want to remember is cellulose. Plant cell wall is mainly made up of cellulose. Bacterial cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. So they are made up of different things. Their composition is different. But we still call it as a cell wall. What is common? These are all complex sugars. These are complex sugars. These are also complex sugars. So generally cell walls are made up of sugars. Sometimes in the exam they also ask about what is a cell wall in fungi made up of, because fungi also carry cell walls. What is it made up of? In fungi, what is cell wall made up of? Any idea? Chitin. Make a note of this. In the exams generally they ask about this. Fungal cell walls are made up of chitin. C-H-I-T-I-N. Chitin. Fungal cell walls are made up of chitin. That is a name. This is also sugar. This is also a complex sugar, but the name is chitin. C-H-I-T-I-N. C-H-I-T-I-N. Chitin. Okay, this is important for the exam. Right. This is one thing I wanted to mention to you. Next. So far we learned about different kinds of cells and details about the cells, especially prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Within eukaryotic cells we talked about plant cells and animal cells. Okay.